Hello and welcome into the live postcast here at Locked On Wolves. Jack Borman and I are going to break down the Wolves' loss to the Warriors here on Sunday night. All that is upcoming here next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves postcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast. I'm filling in for Luke Inman here on the postcast with Jack Borman. We go live after every single Timberwolves game. Tonight's episode is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Timberwolves coming in, riding a 4-game winning streak, beat the Warriors on Friday. They ended up running away with that game in the fourth quarter. A little bit different. It's always tough to beat a team twice in a row, especially a good team like the Warriors. No Andrew Wiggins in this game, but we saw a little bit of a different starting lineup overall from the Warriors, in part because of that, right? So we saw them go a little bit smaller in this game. Looney started Friday. Draymond Green started on Sunday. Buddy Hield was in the starting lineup. Gary Payton II was in the starting lineup with no Wiggins. So a completely different starting lineup outside of Curry and Kuminga for the Warriors. And the Timberwolves tried some different stuff down the stretch. We'll get into the fourth quarter here in a minute. But from the beginning, this game just had a little bit of a different vibe. It was the first game this season the Wolves led at halftime and then ultimately lost. I think they were one of maybe two teams in the league, I think was the stat coming into this game, that had not lost a game they'd led at halftime. So a lot of kind of, twists and turns in this one, Jack. But, what stood out to you most in this game, coming off of Friday's win over the Warriors with the different lineup? What stood out to you the most in this one?
Yeah, I think, something that I talked about with Luke on Friday of things to look forward to for tonight's game was just that I thought the Golden State would try to get back to, Draymond Green at the 5 a little bit more, because we saw them go on that 11-2 run to close the first half in Friday night's game. That was really the only lineup that they had really any type of offensive rhythm or flow with. And so they get back to that with the starting lineup tonight. We'll get into it a little bit later on in terms of what that starting group did for them. But I just really liked that this game was really chippy early on, and it was just really competitive. Guys were playing really, really hard. You saw, Ant kind of get into it with Kuminga. You saw Rudy and Draymond and GP2 kind of all get kind of physical with each other. And that's kind of what we saw in that second matchup of the 2-game set in San Francisco last year, when you had the Jaden and Clay melee, and then Draymond just hunting for Rudy's head and putting him in a headlock for no real reason last year. And so I just think that when these two teams play, it's a total clash of styles and personnel and strengths. And I just think it tends to lend itself to the basketball that's pretty fun to watch. And that's certainly what we had tonight. And, ultimately, even though it didn't go the Timberwolves' way, I thought that this was just a really fun basketball game to watch. And, you got to tip your cap to the Warriors, because they certainly played much harder than the Timberwolves did for the majority of this game and looked like the team that really wanted it more. And, but hey, the Timberwolves, especially in that fourth quarter, could have just totally let it unravel and, gone into this essentially little week-long break that they've got here now and lost by 25. And you've got to give them credit for, the way that especially Nickeil Alexander-Walker really, really kept him in the game and gave us one of those classic banger, early parts of the fourth quarter that we saw Nickeil do probably 5 or 6 times last season that really helped swing and win them games.
Yeah, let's talk about that fourth quarter. So the Wolves up at halftime by 9. They have a terrible third quarter. We'll get into some of the defensive issues they had in this game. A lot of it having to do with what you mentioned, the Warriors, playing small. Wolves give up 44 points in the third quarter, most of any quarter that they've given up this season, or most they've given up in any individual quarter to this point in the season. Fourth quarter, as you mentioned, the Warriors built a little bit of a lead. The Wolves pushed back. Nickeil Alexander-Walker played great. Anthony Edwards, for the entirety of the game, his shot making was outstanding. I think it was like 10 of 12 or something crazy like that early in the fourth quarter. He hits a 3-pointer at the 4:47 mark to put them up by 1 after Nickeil had hit a couple of shots. They were down 9 like 2 minutes prior after a Buddy Hield bucket. Alexander Walker hits 2 threes in a row. Then he hits a tough 2 Ant comes down and hits a crazy kind of runner from like 30 feet away on the right side of the floor, puts them up 1. And then after that, it kind of devolves for the Wolves offensively. Neither team scored for a couple of minutes after that, but like you go through the play-by-play, and it's like Ant misses 2 shots on a possession that has an offensive rebound in between. Then he misses another tough 2. Then there's a shot clock violation in there for the Wolves. And Ant misses another 3. Then he misses another 3. And it was such a good game for Ant up until that point. What did you see? Clearly there was not enough ball movement. In middle stages of this game, early stages, ball movement was great for the Wolves offense, but it really devolved in the fourth quarter, and Ant really struggled with both shot selection, shot making, and then turnovers down the stretch. What did you see that stuck out the most kind of middle, late stages of the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I just saw that the ball movement really went away. It was everything that got them there, got them back in the game. When they were down, what was it? It was either 11 or 9, one of the two, and they come back and storm back on that 13-2 run, I believe it was, to retake the lead. With Nickeil scoring 11 of those 13, I believe. It was all predicated on ball movement. Obviously, there were a couple plays where where Nickeil really did an excellent job of just pump faking, getting the ball off the dribble and making something happen. But most of the time it was just the ball movement really firing around the perimeter and finding Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the corner, in the slot, whatever the case may be. And I just think that, whether it was Ant or Julius Randle, you just didn't get enough from your 2 stars. Really in terms of putting the ball on the deck, trying to draw a crowd and then kick the ball out and get the ball flying around the perimeter, which is what we saw them do an excellent job of, especially in those no-Gobert minutes in that first quarter when they played together. But it's just tough. I think in theory, Julius Randle makes sense around Anthony Edwards late in games, is another guy that you can get the ball to and draw a crowd and find Anthony Edwards, off the catch, where he's just tremendous playing there. But I just think you run into problems if Ant's sucking the life out of the ball, and then you pass it to Julius Randle and he's sucking whatever's life left in the ball out of the ball. And there just was not a real sense of organization. And I don't really think anyone else that was out there on the floor with Ant did a good enough job of kind of demanding the ball from him and trying to get things organized and set up. And I just think, it goes back to really the only gripe that I had with Chris Finch in this game was closing with Julius Randle. I just think that it made no sense to me why he was in there over Naz Reid or over Mike Conley. I think that, if Julius Randle's not really adding much to what you're doing offensively, he's certainly not going to be a positive or he's certainly not going to be in the game for defensive reasons. And so if he's not going to do anything, he had a couple good plays, had a great block, had a good, offensive rebound that helped keep a possession alive there. But it's just, what else is he doing? And he didn't play in the fourth quarter on Friday, and that ended up being a great decision. And I don't really know what Julius Randle did for, the majority of his minutes that warranted him playing over Naz Reid or over Mike Conley. I thought Mike had an exceptional game tonight and did a great job fighting with, Golden State shooters and being aggressive offensively. I thought that they really could have used another guard in there to kind of help keep things organized and get Ant the ball and maybe a bit of a better rhythm and not let the offense devolve into Ant taking 5 straight shots, missing all 5 of those, and also having a turnover that led to that corner 3, I believe, from Buddy Hield that really just put the nail in the coffin. So it was just a lack of ball movement, a lack of awareness from Anthony Edwards. I think, in year 5, he's a mega star. He's been to the Western Conference Finals. He's been in a lot of late games, close. I think that this was honestly, just too much of Ant kind of having too much pride in wanting to beat Steph and Draymond. I just think that was kind of a personal crusade that he was on. And I think that's what makes Ant awesome and fun, is that he has these relationships with these guys and wants to go at them and wants to beat them. But I just think that sometimes when he's interacting with them in the crowd and Steve Kerr, obviously too, we know the backstory with those two and Kerr coaching Ant with Team USA, that there's just a lot of added emotion and energy from Ant. And that made it a lot of fun on Friday. But that also, I think, was part of the reason why he tried to just take the bull by the horns a little too aggressively in this one and probably pressed a little too much. And I don't really think it's anything that's going to linger, going to be a problem moving forward. I think it's more of a one game basis there. But, again, like there was plenty of opportunity there for any other guy to try to come and get the ball, or, for Finch to try to call a timeout and get things a little bit more organized and try to preach the message of, hey, Ant, you got to move the ball. You got to get it back in the flow and attack off the catch, or catch and shoot for three, or drop a play to try to get Julius Randle on the low block isolated against Kuminga, or Gary Payton or Steph, or literally anybody else that was out there that was too small for him. And because he did a good job of attacking mismatches down low in the block in the first half, and just didn't really get back to it enough in the second half. And there just wasn't a whole lot of that. I just didn't think that the Wolves offense really put their best guys in a position to succeed, especially once the ball movement started going away.
Yeah, you talked about Julius Randle a little bit there. And I mean, Julius for this game, 14 points on 15 shots. He did have 11 rebounds, 4 assists. You mentioned the offensive rebound and the big block he had in the fourth quarter, but it was kind of a little bit of, down the stretch, it was a lot of Ant. But as Golden State was building that lead, Randall's on the floor for most of it. And, 4 of 15 shooting, isn't going to cut it. And the clunkiness of him along with it. And you mentioned Mike Conley. I thought, Conley played really well in this game. The 3-point shot looked good. It's looked a lot better of late. And having some of that additional floor spacing out there when Anthony Edwards is they're loading up on him and he's still going to work. And also the timeout usage and the inability, or the, I guess, unwillingness of the Wolves to actually call sets down the stretch. I get it in the sense that Ant was piping hot for so much of the game, as we talked about. And there's a bit of the ride the hot hand. He wants to go right at Golden State and Steve Kerr. But at some point, you got to try something different. You got to do something that's a little bit more organized. And unfortunately, the my turn, your turn stuff, which really just turned into my turn with Anthony Edwards, didn't really work out down the stretch for the Wolves. I was going to say, let's hit one quick positive thing before we move on to the defense. Let's talk quickly about Jaden McDaniels. And we could talk about what he did, I guess, defensively. I thought overall he played well in this game. Obviously, he only had 9 points, but Jaden, he guarded Steph, and I know Steph kind of went off a little bit late. He had a couple stretches in this game where he was Steph Curry, but Jaden McDaniels was really good, especially early, and made life challenging for Steph Curry in this game. I thought the Wolves had a pretty good plan, but at some point, Curry is just Curry.
They had a great plan, and I thought Jaden McDaniels really played his tail off in terms of the way that he chased Steph around. And it's so hard to chase Steph around and remain disciplined. And not only remain disciplined on Steph as a shooter, but also have the length and agility and persistence to be able to cut off Steph's driving lanes, or force him to go baseline to where he then has to jump and make, these crazy wraparound passes that just have a lower chance of making it to the intended target than if, he's driving into the middle of the floor. So I think that he was tremendous in doing that. I think that he also did a good job of, forcing the ball out of Steph's hands in pick and roll. I think that, obviously you don't want to have Steph Curry get going as a scorer in pick and roll just because he's so dangerous. And I think if you can force Steph to try to become a little bit more of a playmaker than a scorer, I think he did that earlier on in the first half, which was great. In the first quarter, I mean, he forced 3 of the 4 Golden State turnovers in the first 3 or 4 minutes of that game, with 2 steals, and then drew an illegal screen on Payton, which was his second foul of the game, and took him out of the game. And he was the one guarding Ant. So I think it's just little things like that were really impressive. And Jaden McDaniels throughout his career has been really, really strong guarding Steph Curry. And I think deserves a lot of credit for what he did tonight, and was much more impactful on the glass in the first half. I believe he had 4 rebounds in the first half, didn't have any in the second half. So you'd like to see him get back into that a little bit more. But again, another credit for Finch for me. I've been clamoring for a long time for Jaden McDaniels to play more at the start of the second quarter, and the start of the fourth quarter, where they can try to get him to be a little bit more of a scorer in the non-Ant minutes. And so I think, again, step one, check that he's playing more in those minutes. But I do think that you'd like to see him try to get a few more shots. There's no reason why Jaden McDaniels has the same number of shots as Nickeil Alexander-Walker, despite playing 12 more minutes than Nickeil. I mean, you can't tell me that Jaden has less opportunity to take shots than Nickeil does, with Nickeil playing 12 less minutes. And I get that Jaden McDaniels hasn't been the most efficient so far this season, but just hanging him out to dry and not trying to help get him the ball and put him in positions to be a scorer, especially when you're being guarded by Steph Curry and you've got a 7-inch height advantage on that, a position Jaden has normally been very successful in when opposing teams try to hide their point guards on him. And so I think try to unlock a little bit more of him as an offensive player in those minutes will be key. But his defense has really been something special for the last 2.5 or 3 weeks. And I think he deserves a lot of praise for the way that he's continued to compete on that end, despite his offense kind of waxing and waning a little bit. And certainly I think they'll need more of that from him offensively, but defensively that's what he's in there to do. And I think the more that he can continue to play like this while staying out of foul trouble is going to continue to be really important. And again, just really, really pleased with the way that Jaden defended Steph Curry throughout this game. And I think allowed Nickeil to have a little bit more energy for that fourth quarter that he had. And just one other point on the fourth quarter for Nickeil. Nickeil had 10 points on 4 or 5 shooting in the fourth quarter. Everyone else had 6 points on 2 of 16 field goal shooting. So 12.5%. Wolves shot 6 of 21 overall in the fourth quarter. That's 29%. They only turned it over twice. So turnovers weren't necessarily the problem. It was just really poor shot selection and shot creation from mostly Ant. So
yeah, it was, I think the one turnover one of the 2 turnovers they had was like, a minute left, down 3, and it turned into a Buddy Hield 3 in transition, which effectively ended the game, down 6 with 57 seconds left. So you're right. It was mostly shot selection. The one turnover was a back-breaking turnover that they're down the stretch. All right. Next, I want to get into what the Timberwolves did defensively that didn't work compared to what they did on Friday. Some of the issues they had defensively in this game that allowed Golden State to score more than the 93 points or less the Wolves had allowed their last 4 opponents. We'll break down all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves POSTCAST is brought to us by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts and ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Timberwolves defense, which has been so phenomenal. They, going back, I talked about this, I think, on Friday's Locked On Wolves show, going back almost 3 weeks now, back before the Wolves' 4-game losing streak. The Wolves have been so dominant over the last 4. They've actually got the number 1 defensive rating in the league going back about 3 weeks and had held their last 4 opponents. I think it was below 93, below 94 points. And in this game, they give up, 113, I think, to the Warriors, 114 to the Warriors in this one. And there were a few areas in which they struggled specifically in this game that pop out. I mean, what do you want to hit on first, Jack? I mean, there's several. We talked a little bit about how good Jaden was on Steph, but there was some other pick and roll defense stuff that didn't go well for the Wolves. And then also some areas where the Wolves have struggled on and off this year to this point that really kind of reared their ugly head in this one.
Yeah. So the first thing that really stood out to me was when the Warriors went with that 5-out starting 5 with Draymond Green at the 5. They just spammed pick and roll with Draymond and Curry in the early part of this game. They wanted to try to. First let's back up for a minute. So the Wolves base defense, what they like to do is they like to have Rudy Gobert up in coverage, not necessarily in a true deep drop. They like to have him a little bit up closer to the level of the screen because you have a 7-foot guy in Jaden McDaniels with a 7'3", 4 wingspan guarding the ball. And so that just cuts off a lot of passing lanes and makes it tough for guards to be able to interact with the big or throw skip passes, whatever the case may be. But the one thing that it's susceptible, that coverage is susceptible with is pocket passes. And Steph Curry, pulled off several tough pocket passes and these little flip passes that made it over McDaniels' hands and before Gobert could get there and really activated Draymond Green on the short roll in the first couple minutes of the game. And then what did he do when Draymond Green's in the middle of the floor and there's a spread floor? I mean, there's very few playmakers that we've seen in this generation who do a better job of making reads and pulling off passes in those situations. And so then what happens? You find guys like Buddy Hield or you find guys like Kuminga who, catch and then just blow right by Julius Randle or Anthony Edwards got blown by a couple times as well, which was a bummer. And I think too, when that happens, you'd say, okay, the first thing that I was looking for was Chris Finch going to stay with Gobert on Green, because that was pulling Gobert away from the basket. And when Gobert's away from the basket and you have these guys cutting backdoor or playing off the catch, it's just tougher for Gobert to get back there and defend the rim and also protect against Draymond Green just kind of camping out in the lane in the front of the rim and having those same dump off passes we see Rudy Gobert catch and finish. So it just kind of put the Wolves defense in a bind, and the Timberwolves didn't really do a whole lot of adjusting to that necessarily. They stuck true to their game plan the whole entire game. But I just thought that Curry, to his credit, did a great job of finding both Draymond Green and Kevon Looney on the roll with those really quick passes that were able to beat the backside rotations. I thought that both Naz Reid and Julius Randle didn't do a good enough job rotating back. I thought that the Wolves didn't really do a great job of tagging off the weak side either, which is something that you maybe would have liked to see if they're getting beat with those pocket passes early. And none of those things happened, and it's understandable why they don't want to do that when Golden State's got guys like Buddy Hield and Pajemski and and Lindy Waters who can all knock down corner threes. So I just thought that the Wolves probably could have tried to do something a little bit different, whether it was play a little bit in a deeper drop and try to invite Steph into the mid range to play in the floater game a little bit more, just to try to force a different look for them. And so that was a little bit unfortunate. And I just thought that that was a huge reason why Golden State got absolutely nuclear explosive in the third quarter. And we'll get into that in a minute too. But the next thing for me was defensive rebounding. I thought that, when Gobert did get pulled away from the basket and did actually do a pretty good job of keeping Golden State away from the rim, which is obviously something that you want to see in drop coverage. Golden State took 29 shots in the short mid-range, that 4 to 14 feet area, so outside the restricted area and below the free throw line. They were 10 of 29 on those shots, 35%, and they only took 18 shots at the rim. They made 14 of them, which is obviously a great number, but a great percentage number, but only taking 18 shots at the rim is a pretty good mark for defense in today's NBA. But the problem with that is that Golden State rebounded 10 of their 21 misses in the 2-point in the 2-point area. So that's 47.6 offensive rebound percentage, which is way too high. I think NBA average there is probably in between 20 and 25% on 2-point shots. So I think that the Wolves just really need to do a better job of rebounding when Gobert is contesting, and that's on everybody, right? Anthony Edwards only had 1 rebound at halftime. And you need more from him. Julius Randle did a good job rebounding in the first half. I think he had 6 rebounds in the first half, finished with a team high 11 rebounds. So you got to give him credit for the way that he got in there and battled on the glass. But for Ant to only have 1 rebound at halftime, Dante wasn't really impactful as a rebounder, even though he got in there and competed on the defensive glass. So I wouldn't necessarily fault him quite as much, but you'd like to see Nah have more than 1 rebound, Mike Conley have more than 2 rebounds. So I just think it's on everyone when you're getting crushed on the offensive glass to get in there and help. I mean, they gave up 14 offensive rebounds for 19 second chance points tonight. And then, you want to look at what happened the other night. They gave up 10 offensive rebounds, but only 8 second chance points. They did a much better job of preventing those kick out passes and made it much more difficult for them there. So, and then lastly for me was transition. Steve Kerr was very obviously, trumpeting that they had to get out and run in transition at the halftime break. And I think they had 2 fast break points at halftime. They had 17 in the second half. So they had 14 in that third quarter alone, where I think their first 3 or 4 possessions were all buckets either in transition or in semi-transition. So, I mean, the Wolves were just getting beat up the floor off of, made baskets too. And that's just completely inexcusable. And I think that was when Wolves fans probably started to feel like, oh God, here we go. Here comes the avalanche that the Warriors can put on you in a hurry. So, that was a bummer to watch, just because those are all things that are controllable. And the Wolves last season, did a great job of defending in transition, and they really have done a great job of defending in transition throughout this win streak. So I think that they've just got to get back to that a little bit. And that was a huge reason why Golden State again scored 44 points on 16 of 22 shooting and did not turn the ball over in the third quarter. There was just not a whole lot of defensive resistance. They played really well in pick and roll. They dominated on the offensive glass and opportunities where they did miss, and they did have second chance opportunities to go rebound the basketball and then continue to play off of that. So I just think that the other thing in that third quarter too is when you're so worried about Steph and Buddy Hield flying around screens to make these threes that they did towards the end of the second quarter and early in that third quarter, then what happens is those guys are able to play off the catch a little bit more and then get their ancillary guys going. And Jonathan Kuminga really did a good job of attacking off the dribble and making some tough shots over Randall. And I think he had 11 points and 11 of his 20 points in that third quarter. Buddy Hield also had 11 in that third quarter. So just a bummer that they just kind of totally lost their focus in that one frame, because you look at the other 3 quarters, 21, 28, and 21 points. I mean, that's certainly going to play. It's just that third quarter that totally came back to bite them, and for my money is the reason why they lost this game.
Yeah, and those second 2, the 3 points you made, the pick and roll defense, the defensive rebounding / second chance opportunities and conversions for Golden State in transition. Defensive rebounding in transition have been issues that have plagued the Wolves on and off this season. They were issues that obviously the team looked pretty well. Team looked pretty different 2 years ago. They were issues, the first year with Rudy Gobert when Cat was hurt a bunch. Both things that they improved significantly on last year. And obviously you have to if you're going to have the dominant number 1 defense like they did. But we've seen those rebounding issues and transition issues kind of rear their ugly heads so far this season at times. But as you said, they've improved so much over the last 4 games. And we said this last Wednesday. We did the postcast after the Wolves won last Wednesday. And we talked a little bit about this Warriors matchup in long 2s and 3s and some of those longer rebounds, that it can't just be Rudy and it can't just be, to a lesser extent, Randall rebounding. It's got to be everybody. I mean, you mentioned some of the guys that didn't really contribute. I mean, Nah was great. He didn't have a single defensive rebound in this game. Conley had one defensive rebound. Yeah. So and DiVincenzo had one as well. So you combine those 3 guys, you're talking 50 plus minutes, and they have a combined 3 rebounds, 4 rebounds, or 3 defensive rebounds, 2 defensive rebounds. Actually, that's not going to get it done. And then if you're not defending those kickouts or those, those putback opportunities, then, that's a problem. All right, let's close by peeking ahead. The Wolves don't play because the NBA Cup schedule this week. They won't play again until Friday. We'll talk about that matchup against the Lakers here next. Today's episode of the Postcast here at Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Monday Night Football action tomorrow night, I guess, Monday night. Bengals at Cowboys. Bengals are -5.5 at Dallas, which seems a little bit aggressive to me. I know that the Bengals are still playing for their playoff lives. The Cowboys aren't exactly, but still, I don't know if I don't hate Cowboys +5.5 in this one, actually. But that's your Monday night game at FanDuel. You can visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. So the Timberwolves don't play again until Friday. It would have been great to ride this 5-game winning streak, or what could have been a 5-game winning streak, if they'd been able to surge ahead and hold on against Golden State on Sunday. But next up is the Lakers. The games that the Wolves got added are LA, and who's the next one? Try and pull it up real quick. But they're winnable games. I feel like the Wolves, the draw was okay for the games that got added to the schedule. They have the Lakers at home on Friday, and then they're at San Antonio on Sunday. Of course, the Wolves already lost to the Spurs and Wemby once this year. But obviously both winnable games for the Wolves. And then their next scheduled game that was already on the schedule is the following Thursday. So like over a week and a half from now, that's Karl-Anthony Towns' return to Target Center against the Knicks on TNT on December 19th. But the Lakers Friday, the Wolves, of course, just blew out the Lakers by 29 on Monday night last week, which was kind of like what, I know they beat the Clippers before that, but that was the blowout win that kickstarted this run. The Lakers are still reeling. LeBron James got out of his shooting slump, had a triple-double the other night, but looked extremely old, as he is, in Minnesota last week. So the Wolves-Lakers matchup, like that's a good matchup for Minnesota. We've seen them play the Lakers twice already. Anything between now and Friday with this layoff, and the Wolves will undoubtedly get 3 good practices in between now and Friday. Anything, Jack, that you expect the Wolves to do differently? Maybe not necessarily because of the matchup, but maybe rotation wise, maybe Rob Dillingham gets his ankle right after getting a week and a half off here. Maybe, something that we see something else change, perhaps rotation wise or strategy wise for Finch going into this Lakers game on Friday.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see if we see more Rob Dillingham instead of Josh Minott. Chris Finch said pregame today, he told reporters, I believe Dane Moore tweeted that he's hoping that Rob Dillingham will be available for that game on Friday. So that's obviously a big plus for them. I'm not really sure how they're gonna handle the rotation with Minott versus Dillingham. I know obviously when Gabe Vincent is in there for the Lakers as a smaller guard that's a little slighter of frame, isn't going to bully Rob Dillingham offensively. I think that's certainly a matchup that you would try to circle if there's a guy in the Lakers that you want to see Chris Finch maybe match minutes with to get Rob in there. That's certainly going to be a chance to do it. And the Lakers perimeter defense has been horrible. So that would be a really good opportunity for Rob Dillingham to kind of get loose and impact the game, both as a scorer and as a playmaker. So I'd personally rather see Rob Dillingham in that game than Josh Minott, but that's not at all a comment about what Josh Minott has brought the team the last few times he's been in the game. I've been really pleased with the minutes that he's given them, over the course of the last week or so. And I think has certainly earned I guess more confidence in him from the coaching staff. And we saw that on Friday, right, with the way that he flew around, had that nice three in the, tonight had that nice three in the corner after coming in the first quarter for Anthony Edwards. So again, you'd like to see him be able to play a little bit more than 4 minutes just to get a little bit more of an extended run. But again, it's just tough, I think, for Finch with dealing with having so many high caliber guys in your rotation. And you see what the Warriors were doing on Friday night, playing 11, 12, 13 guys. It's just really tough to maintain any type of rhythm for the mainstays in the rotation when you're doing that. So I think for Finch, it's got to be pick a 9, maybe limit how many minutes you're playing, Julius Randle and Mike to try to get a few more minutes than the 4 that Minott got for Dillingham on Friday. I'd probably target Rob to play, maybe 12 minutes, maybe 2 6-minute stretches, bridging the first and second quarters, and then the third and fourth quarters potentially. In those, we kind of see in those minutes that Ant comes out right at the end of the first and the third quarter and then sits a little bit. Maybe get him out there with a guy like Mike Conley, maybe play both of them together and see how that goes, just as or at minimum get him and Na out there together at the start of the fourth quarter, start of the second quarter. So, and who knows? I think Dante DiVincenzo, depending on how he's shooting it or how he's playing it, we've seen some really bipolar basketball from him in terms of it being really, really good or pretty uncomfortable looking. So I think that you could potentially see Rob Dillingham maybe chip into some of his minutes too. But again, I just don't think that against the Lakers, it's a game, especially with them playing again on Sunday. It's a game where you need to just play your starters all damn near 40 minutes like they did tonight So again, the Lakers have been awful defensively. The last I saw Anthony Davis went bananas in the first quarter tonight, and they were still down against Portland, I think. And LeBron did not play because of a foot injury. So obviously, I think they have some time off here in the Cup. So the Wolves, I don't think they play anybody until they play the Wolves on Friday either. So you'd expect that LeBron will play in that game. But again, the Lakers just don't have a ton of perimeter shooting options available to them. So I think the Wolves pick and roll defense should be able to pick things back up, and they'll do a good job of forcing the Lakers to play below the 3-point line, because the Lakers don't really love to shoot threes. So it's another good opportunity for the Wolves defense to turn in another strong performance. And we'll see what kind of difference Austin Reeves can make. He didn't play in that blowout win at Target Center because of a pelvic issue or a pelvis issue. I think he bruised his pelvis. So we'll see if he's able to come back and be back to his effective self once again for the Lakers. But again, that some of the guys that are playing behind Anthony Davis were pretty tough watches. So we'll see if the Wolves front court can take advantage of that once again. But should be another win for the Timberwolves, especially with the way the Lakers have been trending.
Yeah, sitting here right now, the Lakers are up 11 down the stretch, recording this live on Sunday against Portland. So they should win, but still lost 7 out of their last 10 games. Any final thoughts from this one, Jack, as we look ahead to Friday?
No, I mean, the basketball fan in me, I never take for granted the opportunity to sit, in the first 2 or 3 rows and watch LeBron James up close, because I've certainly grown up with LeBron at the peak of his powers, and it's hard to watch Father Time put up a pretty good performance in that game at Target Center last week. And man, it just kind of makes you sad a little bit seeing LeBron and old start to get into the same sentence together. But I think this year is the first year that we've really started to see that. And I think we're going to start to see some pressure on the Lakers to try to make a trade here, maybe well in advance of that February trade deadline, just because of the way that they've been trending, especially defensively. And the minutes that they've played without Anthony Davis on the floor have just been a train wreck defensively. So, so we'll see if the Lakers are able to put together a stronger defensive performance, but there's nothing that you see watching them play that inspires any type of confidence that they'll be able to do that.
All right. Hopefully the 4 days off for the Wolves will do them some good as they head into Friday against Lakers at the Spurs on Sunday. We'll be back, of course, Friday postcast. Typically Luke Inman hosting with Jack Borman on the postcast. So be sure to tune in live after every single Wolves game at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. And then the audio will be on Locked On Wolves following. So the audio of this will be on Locked On Wolves tonight. I'll be back on Locked On Wolves Monday. I'm daily Monday through Friday with the daily Locked On Wolves show. And again, the audio for this show always lives over there at Locked On Wolves. So if you ever miss it live, go check it out at Locked On Wolves. A big thank you for watching tonight on YouTube. A big thank you for listening after the fact. And for Jack Borman, big thank you. We'll catch you next time.